that, again, we talk about normalizing things. It's normal in our culture to do nothing about your health until you're in crisis mode, right? So to not take any responsibility for your health until you're already in trouble. So taking responsibility is one of the pieces that's so important to understand about your sleep. We've got to take responsibility about it. So that's one piece. Another reason why we have this health crisis is that people are using the wrong definition for what it means to be healthy, because they're talking about how they feel, just like our testimonial, right? He talked about, I felt okay, right? And then he felt better when he got more energy, right? So people are using how they feel to define whether they're healthy or not, and it's getting them into trouble. Because what does it feel like to have cancer? What does it feel like to have high blood pressure or heart disease, right? You don't feel those things, right? So it's the same thing. He called his poor sleep normal. He wasn't even noticing that that was a problem, and yet that's a big problem that will affect everything, right? So those are the two main ones. There's a third one. I'll cover that at the end. The third reason why we have the health crisis today. Now, when we talk about sleep, how many people think that sleep is contributing, poor sleep is contributing to our health crisis? Right? Yeah, a lot of hands are going up because you are the folks that recognize how much sleep affects our health. Do you know how many people in our population are being affected by poor sleep? It's growing. It's getting worse and worse, right? It wasn't like this, even a couple generations ago, right? So how many people think maybe 1 in 10 people are struggling with their sleep? How many people think it's 1 in 10? No hands are going up. How many people think it's more than 1 in 10? All the hands go up, yeah. And the research tells us that right now, 7 out of 10 people during this week have had some sort of struggle with sleep at least one night. 7 out of 10, 70%. Yeah, it's a huge problem, and it's affecting our health in a big way. So we're going to cover some of the ways that it can affect us. But we all know that when we're not getting good sleep, when we're not being able to fall asleep, when we're not being able to stay asleep, when we wake up and we can't get back to sleep, never mind the other types of concerns that are sleep disorders. When that's happening, it's cumulative. And over time, it takes its toll, and it drains our batteries. So the benefits of sleep, let me just move that off of there. Thank you. The benefits of sleep. Why is sleep important? Because sleep affects everything. So good sleep is actually linked to anti-aging. It's one of the best anti-aging protocols that you can do is to get good sleep. Remember you heard about beauty sleep? We've heard about that. That's an old idea. It's true. Anti-inflammatory. Good sleep is actually anti-inflammatory. It prevents mood disorders and dementia, right? Good for your brain. It promotes healthy BMI, right? If you've got your body mass index, if you've got too much fat on your body, good sleep can actually be the fix for that. Oh, I can see the relief in the room, right? People are thinking, I thought it was strict diet and exercise, but no, just getting good sleep can turn that around. Neurodegenerative diseases, protection for that, protects against arthritis, cardio problems. It's anti-cancer, anti-carcinogenic. It supports your immune system, and it even prevents musculoskeletal injuries, right? We pretty much covered every organ system in the body is impacted by sleep. So these are the benefits of good sleep. But what happens if you don't have good sleep? It's going to affect you in many ways. And one way is that it's going to tank your battery, right? You're going to be running on empty. Keep going. Yeah, I was doing okay on 5 hours of sleep. That's what he thought, right? But it was actually affecting his recovery from exertion and his stamina. It was all being affected. And he thought that was just normal for a guy his age, right? Doing his work. And it wasn't. It was not healthy normal. Yeah? So when we look at, well, what actually happens when we lose sleep? Okay, fatigue, we know that's there. We know that. It drains us. But what else happens when we don't get enough sleep? It starts to affect everything else in our life. We get irritable. It affects our relationships, right? We get brain fog. We're not thinking as clearly. We're not making the best decisions anymore. and it's going to affect our immune system. As we said, all those other things can start to be being affected. So when we think of all of these pieces, I want you to, there's a few fun facts here. I'm just going to read because I listed them down. If you think about starving to death or not getting enough sleep, you will die faster from sleep deprivation than you will from food deprivation. Yeah, that's how important sleep is. The only mammals on the planet that the word is willingly delay sleep are humans. We're the only mammals on the planet that willingly delay sleep. No other animal does that. Not willingly, right? Right? We're so smart, right? Smartest species on the planet, right? Ideally, when you want to fall asleep at night, it should take you between 10 and 15 minutes. That's what healthy normal is, 10 to 15 minutes. There's a couple other pieces here. This one was scary. 1/3 of all Americans drive drowsy or fall asleep. 1/3 of the drivers on the road. Yeah. All right, so when our batteries are running low, it can actually add serious complications to our sleep. It's not just fatigue that's the only concern, right? So tonight we're going to talk about general sleep issues like not being able to fall asleep, not being able to stay asleep, or waking up and not being able to go back to sleep. But we're also going to talk about things like what we call that sleep apnea piece, right? So these are some things that I see in my practice where you're not getting enough oxygen in when you're sleeping. Or people that have what's called thoracic outlet syndrome. Anybody ever get tingling in their fingers when they wake up? Yeah. So that's called thoracic outlet syndrome. We're going to talk about that. And then restless leg syndrome. Anybody here struggle with that? Yeah, the hands are going up. So those are some of the common things that I see in the practice. And I'm going to show you what the links are of how to really get great results with these pieces as well. And we're also going to cover the social aspects of our modern day life and how that is impacting our sleep as well. All right, does that sound good? Mm-hmm. Okay. So before we go into this, I want to set this up for you. I want to create a context for it. And I want to talk about the Body Signals program because sleep issues are body signals. They are symptoms, and symptoms are body signals. And body signals means we want you to learn how to speak the language of your body, because if you're getting a symptom, it's your body calling out to you, you're exceeding the danger zone right now, you need to make a change. That's the purpose of symptoms. And poor sleep is part of that. So we can tolerate it, we can live our life around that poor sleep, drag through the day, start getting the caffeine in to just help us to get through the day, missing out on fun activities because we're too tired to do that, right? It affects our entire life, but we can manage it, except we don't want to. I want you to learn how to speak body. And if you're having symptoms of poor sleep, we want to pay attention to understand that. Because in our culture, we're actually trained to not do anything about it. Or even worse, like just, stick it out, tough it out, right? Or even worse, stifle it and mask it. Get on some drugs to help you manage it without ever correcting the cause of it. So everything is based on what are you going to do about the body signal. That's what's important. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to listen to it and make a change and understand what kind of change you need to make, or are you going to stifle it? Because your outcomes are going to be dependent on what your behavior is. And your behavior is based on how you think about things. So tonight, I want you to be thinking differently. That's why I want you fully engaged, so you think differently about sleep and what you can do about it. All right? So when we talk about these body signals, let me ask you, if you have a signal that's telling you you're exceeding the safety level, is that a smart system for the body to have? Or is that a sign that your body's stupid?
No, it's smart.
Yeah, our bodies are smart, aren't they? Right? Our bodies are smart. So we want to pay attention to the signaling, the language that our body is giving to us. Okay. And the reason we have this graphic here is that oftentimes the symptom is the part that's showing up. And we could chip away at that symptom so we don't have the symptom anymore. But there's this whole other piece below it. It's just going to pop up if you just try to chip away only at the symptom, right? So there's a whole problem underneath the surface that may not be apparent that symptom is alerting us to. And that's what we want to get to, is what's going on down here that we need to address. And once we address that, then there's no need for the body to have that signal anymore. That's what we want to see for healthy function, is the signal goes away because our body doesn't need it anymore, because it's healthier. Okay? All right. So when you get a symptom, always ask the question, when did that symptom start? So what do you think? If you have a symptom, when did the problem start? Same time as the symptom? Probably way before. All right, so let's now look at this continuum here, the illness wellness continuum. Again, it's going to give us context here. And where do symptoms lie in this continuum of health and wellness and disease, sickness? So in this continuum, we have a range. We've got premature death at one end, we've got robust health at the other end, and in the middle, we kind of have a neutral point. So we have 3 zones. We have a sick zone, a not sick zone, and a healthy zone. And our job, my job here in the practice is, no matter where anybody is on this range, is just to get them moving in that direction. This is from a robust study that was done in the 70s, in the 80s, and then again in 2004. And what they did is they just plotted a huge population of people on this graph, and they found out everybody's going to be here somewhere. And so all of you in the room, me too, we're somewhere on this continuum. And they realized that nobody was standing still. Everybody was going to move in one direction or the other. And there's going to be a speed or momentum, a velocity to which direction they were heading, right? And so when I talk about getting people moving in that direction, sometimes I first have to just slow down the momentum going the wrong way, turn the corner, and then start pushing in the right direction, right? There's momentum to this as well. So what they found was, before a symptom ever shows up, so this neutral point is where there's no symptoms, nothing you can name as a symptom. You could say that our carpenter friend here, that he was probably living right about here. Nothing that he's really complaining about. But was it that robust level of health that was the healthy normal? Not at all. And so when we're here, it's pretty easy for function to be lost. And the first thing that shows up is a sign. A sign will show up before a symptom shows up. Who knows the difference between a sign and a symptom? Which one do you feel? The symptoms are what you feel. The sign is something you can measure, but it's not necessarily something you feel. Like if you have heart disease, when you're feeling the chest pain, that's a symptom that you feel. But long before that ever comes, you could measure your blood pressure, and that's a sign that something's wrong, but you didn't feel it. Right? So that's what they figured out, is as you lose function, the signs are going to be there before the symptoms show up. They also discovered that if the symptoms are not addressed and they stay there longer and longer, it turns into disability. So what's a disability? That's where you can't fix it anymore, right? You're stuck with it. You're stuck with that poor function. Now they also found that on the other side of this neutral point, moving towards robust health, the first step was awareness. People had to even know that there was another whole world out there, right? So our testimonial here, he didn't know until we educated him that there's this other healthy normal that he hadn't been aware of. And then there's education of, well, what do I need to do? Now that I know that this is out here, what do I need to do to get there? And that's why we do the Body Signals program, because of that importance of education. If people are going to get to that healthy level of function, they've got to put energy into it, and they've got to learn some things. And then finally, there's growth, and I like to call that action. That's where you have the information, but now you have to act on it, okay? And that's how you hit that robust level of health at the very top there, okay? So that's our range right here. Symptoms are telling you what direction you're heading. So if these symptoms start to show up, you know you're somewhere down here. But in our culture, we've normalized symptoms, so some people think, oh, I'm healthy, yeah, because they're managing the symptoms with medications. Right? So I always have to ask people, what's your objective? Is your objective to just get good sleep, or just to have your eyes closed for a certain number of hours? They've got drugs that'll help you do that, right? Or is your objective to get healthier and stronger? And if your objective is to get healthier and stronger, then I'm going to teach you tonight what the solutions are for that. Okay, does that sound good? All right, so when we talked about the reasons why we have a health crisis, the reasons why people are not getting good sleep, they don't necessarily either know what to do, or in our culture, they're not taking responsibility for it. And so they're using this idea of how you feel. We talked about that. And so we need a better definition. We need a better premise to work from if we're going to start making healthier decisions. So let's now look at, again, laying the foundation. What are the better premises that we want to have in place as we look at these sleep issues and what the solutions are? So first off, healthy is normal. Healthy is normal, right? Sickness is abnormal, right? It's normal to be healthy. We were born where every cell in our body is always defaulting, always wanting to move towards health, right? We're designed to be healthy, right? Our body is smart, right? Look at the things our body is doing for us all day long. Our heart's gonna thump 10,000 times today. We're gonna take 10,000 breaths today. We're digesting our food today, right? All of our cells are smart, they're filled with intelligence, and it's our nervous system that is the master system that is controlling and coordinating all of that function, all of those cells. And so the nervous system, the brain sending the messages down the spinal cord, out through the nerves, it's the most delicate tissue in the body, and it needs to be protected. And so our spine is the suit of armor that protects our nervous system. Yeah? Okay, now the last part that we have to recognize is that we are living in a modern life that is unnaturally stressful. I don't care if we've normalized it and we think, hey, modern life's pretty good. Look at all the conveniences that we have. Yeah, okay, modern life is good, but it's also way more stressful than we were ever designed to be in. Think about how our ancestors were designed, the lifestyle we were designed for, how we would have moved our body. We would have been moving our body all day. We would have had to move our body to go find food to eat, right? So we would never eat unless we were moving our body. All right, modern life is so convenient. We have engineered movement right out of our life, right? We are so sedentary. That's not what our bodies were designed for. Think about how we're eating these days. There are foods that we are eating that didn't even exist 200 years ago, right? Yeah, our bodies don't even know what they are, and we're putting them in and calling it food, right? When we think of the stresses that we're under and the demand that we're under, very different from 40,000 years ago when we were hanging out with the tribe and everything was pretty straightforward and clear where you were in the tribe, the connections you had in the tribe. In fact, if you had some of the behavior that we have today, it would be suicide because you'd be kicked right out of the tribe, right? And that would be suicide, right? So the levels of stress that we have also do not match what we originally were designed for. So we are living an unnaturally stressful life. And when it comes to sleep, it's absolutely true as well. Absolutely true. Even just a few decades ago, our sleep habits have changed in the last few decades. Never mind over the last few years, right? And when I say years, I mean, I'm thinking back to before the light bulb. What was life like before the light bulb? And then we got the light bulb, and that changed our sleep patterns. And then we got screens. And screens have changed our sleep patterns. How many people here look at their cell phones at night? Look at a screen at night. Kindle, right? Our laptops, our computers, right? So I want you to know that the light that shines out of these devices is actually going right into our brain, and it's confusing the deepest part of our brain where there's a gland that lives there. It's called the pineal gland. And the pineal gland will regulate melatonin, which is your sleep hormone. So if we get light shining into our eyes when it shouldn't actually be there, it confuses the pineal gland, and that actually puts the body into a stress response. And then that stress response is linked to all those things that we see can happen if we get poor sleep.
Is the TV the same?
TV can be the same, yeah. So you want to look at all the electronics, especially nowadays. The TV, the modern TVs have a lot of blue light coming out of them. Yeah. Maybe some of the older screens, it might not have been the same. I'm not sure, but for sure, when we see the screens nowadays, it's that blue light that's the concern.
I think some of the older ones may be okay.
Yeah, the older ones may be okay.
Way less.
Yeah. Whoops. Way less.
Some of the newer cell phones have a thing you can switch on it.
Because people are getting smart about it. That's right.
Smart
Yeah.
TVs might have some of that same feature coming on.
Yeah, and I don't know about that, so I'm going to tell you about the things that I do know tonight, and then there's so much more that we have to learn about this, isn't there? All right, so life is awesome, but it's incredibly divergent, different from what we were intended to be living, and that has created stress in our system and stress in our bodies. And the biggest problem with poor sleep is it affects our brains. It affects our brains. Now, I want to just tell you a little bit of my story. Like, this is my Achilles heel. Getting enough sleep, this is definitely a piece that I have to work on. Yeah, my daughter, she's over there nodding. Yeah, she knows, yeah. And when I think about back when I was a kid, my mom had a full-time job and was helping my dad start his chiropractic office. I remember her being up late at night typing away on the typewriter doing reports, and that was the model that I had in our family, that you just got to do what it takes to get things done, and your sleep was expendable. Like, that was a model right in my family. Yeah. So I have been learning about how the problems that sleep can cause, and I didn't want to wait for a wake-up call to make me change my sleep, right? I wanted to be smart about it, be proactive about it. So for me, when I'm going to change a habit, I need to dive in and learn all about it so I can change my belief about it, and that's when I'll be able to then change the habit. I want to tell you, I have a dramatic story that was a wake-up call for me because it happened to somebody else. It was their wake-up call, but I wasn't going to let it happen to me. And this was it. I have a friend who was my midwife. She was my midwife. And she led a very healthy lifestyle. She got adjusted, she ate really clean food, meditated, exercised. She got a very aggressive form of cancer. And it just blew me away, like, how can this be? Like, she's doing everything right, how can this be? When I asked her, when she was on her, getting ready to go, right? I asked her, why do you think this happened? She said, it was my sleep. I was a midwife. I was up at all kinds of hours. Like, I was not able to get good sleep because of my passion, because of my, what my purpose in life was. That was one of the factors. Not saying it was the only one, but she definitely, and when she said that, it hit me. It hit me like, oh my gosh, I've got to start paying attention to that. I've got to start paying attention to my practice. What's happening with people's sleep? And this was many years ago when this happened. And that's when I started my journey to study this and make changes. So don't let a wake-up call happen, right? Yeah, make the changes now. And I always say to people, like, if you're not getting good sleep now, what would it take for you to have a wake-up call for that to happen? Then they tell me what it is. I say, it's okay, so let's not wait for that. Let's not wait for that. All right, so when our pineal gland now is being confused and it ramps up our stress response, that stress starts to take its toll, and it's cumulative. So we used to think that you could make up your sleep, right? Oh, when I retire, I'll catch up on my sleep. Yeah, that used to be a thing people thought. Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So we've actually, when we look at how we've been living for 3,700 generations of doing it right, pretty much the last 3 generations is where we've screwed it up. And it's creating these enormous amounts of stress. So the stress comes in 3 dimensions. Traumas, you can think of traumas as stress, but it's not just the injuries and the accidents, it's the sedentariness, it's the postural stresses. Those are a big factor as well that contribute to our stress levels. Toxins, that's the foods that we're eating most of the time that are not healthy foods, and that will actually create stress in our system. And then there's the thoughts that we're thinking, that we're letting get in, that we're allowing to impact us. It's our thoughts that create stress in our system too. So it's these stresses that add up over time. And now let's look at how this physiology of sleep. Let's look at the physiology of sleep and how stresses can impact it. So the first thing I want to look at is what's the kind of the healthy normal here? How does this all work? So the sun shines in on us when it hits our retina. It sends signaling back into the deep part of our brain, and it tells us about timing of the day. So the light tells us about the timing of the day. And then the timing of the day is going to then influence what's happening with our hormones, which are how we are controlling a lot of functions in our body. the pineal gland is the one that releases melatonin, which is our sleep hormone. So when there isn't sun, then the melatonin starts to get released. But when there is light, the pineal gland will shut down that melatonin release because it's daytime and it's time to be active. It's time to go out and hunt and gather. It's time to be moving around. And so the pineal gland diminishes the melatonin when there's light coming into the eyes. Now the pituitary gland also will get triggered, and it's going to start to trigger the adrenal glands to start releasing cortisol. Cortisol we often think of as the stress hormone. It's not a bad hormone because it's a hormone that we need when we need to be active. So when it's time to go hunt and gather, that cortisol gets us going, gets our energy going, right? The adrenaline that turns into cortisol, that's down here in the kidneys and the adrenal glands. Now also, this is going to be the time when we're going to be hunting for food and eating it. So our liver, our digestive enzymes, there's going to be food, activity, our body temperature is going to be higher. All these things are going to be happening from the pituitary, signaling our autonomic, our automatic functions, so we're ready to do our day, right? So that's the healthy normal, the link between the sun and when we should eat and when we should sleep and when we should be active. There's a rhythm to it. So I want to show you what the circadian rhythms are with all of this and the natural rhythms. So this is actually a 24-hour clock here rather than a 12-hour clock. We have midnight here, we have noon here, right? So this is the this is the cycle of the sun as it goes around us, right? So we know that our best, deepest sleep happens between midnight and 2 a.m. This is our best, deepest sleep. So let's take note. If you had to be up because you had to get something done, it would be better for you to go to sleep and sleep deeply here and get up early and finish that task than it would be to push through and then sleep in. Okay, so that's important for us to understand the circadian rhythms. All right, so that's what happens in the deepest part of the sleep is happening at 2 a.m. Our lowest body temperature is right at 4:30 a.m. And when we start to get a little chilly, and it's going to start to wake us up a little bit, right? And then around 6 a.m. when the light starts to come, right, we have a big increase in our blood pressure right around 6:45. Why is that? Time to get up, time to go hunt and gather, time to get out there and start moving our body. So blood pressure goes up to start getting the blood and the oxygen out to the body. Melatonin secretion will stop now at 7:30, by 7:30 because the light has come in. So the pineal gland says, oh, time to turn that melatonin off, time to be awake now, not asleep. We have our highest level of alertness right here at 10 a.m. So if you think about when do I need to get certain tasks done where I have to be really alert for those tasks, best to schedule those to be around 10 a.m. And then you've got noon when the sun is up at the highest. Best coordination, again, thinking about hunting, gathering, and activity, right? Best coordination's around 2:30. So hunting in the afternoon would be a good idea. Fastest reaction time around 3:30, really good for hunting and gathering here. Greatest cardiovascular efficiency and muscle strength, right up around 5, right? And then we've completed our day. We're back in the tribal compound, right? Preparing our food. Highest blood pressure peaks out right at 6:30, and then highest body temperature right around 7, so we're revved up and we're warm and we're ready to go, start to lay down. So we start to lose the light right around here, and now right around 9, the melatonin secretion starts. Time to start settling down, to get ready to go to sleep. Time to grab some firewood, grab your mate, go into the cave where it's dark, right? And just settle down for a long sleep, right? And so that's what's supposed to happen when it's dark, right? That's the healthy, normal circadian rhythm. Now, another piece that's not written on here, but I want to mention it, and that is that the research shows that our ability to repair damaged tissue, our greatest healing will happen after between 5 and 7 hours of sleep. So once we've had 5 hours of sleep, that really good healing starts to kick in until about 7 or 7.5 hours of sleep. So if you're only getting 5 hours of sleep like him, right, he's missing out on all the repair time that his body would need. Do you see? So getting that long sleep is important. Now, some people that have shift work or they have things that interrupt them sleep, they might get 8 hours in 24 because they sleep for a chunk and then they sleep for a chunk. Research now tells us that's not as good as having that long sleep where you're hitting that 5 to 7 hours for actually getting that repair in that your body needs. All right. So let's look at now what is it that's happening between the melatonin and the cortisol. There's a relationship. So the melatonin is what gets secreted during this time, but during this time when we're active, it's the cortisol that's the hormone that helps us to be active in a healthy way. Come on. Here we go. All right, so when we look at this natural cortisol cycle, here is a day. This is over one day. So we have, 6 p.m., we're going to bed, cortisol levels are dropping, and then midnight, and then by 6 a.m. they're starting to increase, and then they peak in the morning, and then they start to drop again as the day goes on, and by 6 p.m. they're low again, and we go through that cycle again. That's the healthy normal for cortisol cycles. Yeah?
What is the best time to stop eating?
Yeah, probably 6 p.m. would be the best time, but it depends on when you're going to sleep. So you want to do it 2 to 3 hours before you go to sleep. And you can eat lightly, but you just don't want to do a heavy meal. Yeah. Okay. So again, just looking at these cycles, this is what the healthy normal is. Okay? But what are most people in our modern population, what's happening for most people? Cortisol levels are not dropping down anymore. They're staying right about here, and then they go up, and then they stay right here. And so our cortisol levels, because of our stress levels, because we're stressed, because cortisol is the stress hormone. So when we're stressed, we're going to increase cortisol. And so even it's going to go into our sleep time, and that cortisol will stay high. Okay? And if we are shutting down the melatonin because of the lights coming in, if we shut the melatonin down, that's stressing the body, and that will increase the cortisol. So now we're seeing this cortisol that stays flat and then has a little peak. Sometimes it's even peaking during the night as well, is what we're finding in people, right? So this is a problem, because if we don't get that deep rest, right, then we're not getting all the benefits of deep sleep that we need to have, that we were designed to have, right? We're missing that. All right. All right, and so the other thing that happens with sleep is growth hormone is secreted during healthy deep sleep. And growth hormone is also important for stimulating cell repair, cell growth, cell generation, and it also affects our mood and our cognition. So for learning things, we need to have human growth hormone, HGH. And sleep is the most powerful anti-aging cellular regenerating treatment in the world. Sleep is the best thing you can do for that. Okay. Now, when we have this chronically elevated cortisol, it's a perfect storm happening in our modern world, because watch what pairs up here. When we have limited exertion, when we have chronic psychological stress, and we have sleep deprivation, all of these things are what promote cortisol being high, staying high. And so some of the things that will, I want you to visualize a graphic here. So we've got a graphic here, and this is a graph of energy levels, right? So energy levels are here, right? And this is over a day. So when we're sleeping, our energy is low because we're sleeping, right? And then we have the day where we have our normal stresses during the day, right? And then we have times when we're exerting ourselves, when we exert ourselves, and that's using high energy, right? Can you see that there, right? What's happening is we're losing good sleep and we're losing exertion. And if we don't have the exertion, then when it's time to go to sleep, our bodies physically aren't actually tired. We're mentally exhausted, but we're not physically exhausted. And so that means that our sleep may not be as deep, and then we're not getting the good deep sleep that we need. And so what's happening is, instead of us having energy that goes this whole range during our day, we're having not as much low energy because we're not getting good sleep. We're getting the stress all through our day, and then we're not getting the exertion that we need to have happen. And that limited exertion is one of the problems. It's actually creating more cortisol, more psychological stress, more sleep deprivation. So this becomes now a cycle that gets worse and worse.
So you'd say it's better to exercise after work than before work?
It's not good to exercise before sleep. Yeah, but if you saw back in the circadian rhythm, right? This is the time when we have the greatest cardiovascular efficiency and muscle strength. So this may be the best time to exercise for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I want to say this: if in your day the only time you get the exercise done is in the morning, do it in the morning, right? Because it's better to get it done in the day than to wait and then not have time for it and not get it done, okay? But probably you don't want to be exercising right when that melatonin is time to kick in.
Stretching.
Yeah, sure, stretching, moving your body, yeah, exactly. Okay, so what happens when we have sleep deprivation? Literally, parts of our brain are going to slow or shut down completely. And what we'll find is with short-term sleep deprivation, we're going to lose attention and we're going to lose long-term memory. Those parts of the brain will shut down. With chronic sleep deprivation, you get those two, plus working memory doesn't work so well, and decision-making doesn't work so well. So those parts of our brain literally shut down. Now, the other thing that happens when we sleep in the brain is our cells, our brain cells, will shrink. And when they shrink, the cerebrospinal fluid that is bathing those cells gets to flush through those cells and clear out the toxins. If we don't get the deep sleep, the cells stay plumped up and pressing against each other, and you can't get those channels of fluid cleaning things out. And so we know that Alzheimer's is associated with poor sleep, and they're finding that not being able to flush the brain means the plaquing builds up, the toxins build up in the brain, and one of the links is that we're not getting good sleep to clear it out.
Is this permanent when you say it shuts down? Or?
With short term, probably not, but with long term, it can be. I remember hearing, I think it was like, maybe it was on Radio Lab or it was NPR, something like that, and they talked about this car dealership that wanted to make a big splash, and so every year they had a truck that would be given to the person that could stay awake the longest. And so they had all these people that would go into the contest, and they'd all be standing around the truck to see how long, and the one that could stay awake the longest got the truck. Well, they interviewed these people. Years later, it still had tanked their health. Their health was still damaged. Brain function was damaged because they were awake for like 3 days, 4 days. Just staying awake. Damaged their brain. Yeah. That was before we knew better. And those kinds of things gave us information, right, to start paying attention to. So sleep deprivation, right? Unnatural schedules. People that have shift work, yeah. Don't do that for a long time. I don't care how good it pays you, all right? Don't do the shift work for a long time. Bakers that get up at midnight. By 5 a.m., they've only worked for 5 hours, they're exhausted. And even when they've been doing it for 20 years, they're still exhausted when it's 5 a.m. So better to start at 3 a.m. than to start at midnight, right? So look closely at any kind of shift work that's putting pressure on you. So unnatural schedules, what are the reasons we would have unnatural schedules? Sometimes we find it's work demands. Sometimes we'll find that it is college studying, right? Those kinds of pressures. Sometimes it's just staying up partying, or just, you just get into that wrong mode. Sometimes it's email and surfing the net and just get sucked into that, right? And sometimes there's reasons why we're not sleeping. Insomnia, babies, whatever those other reasons are. But there's a lot of reasons that we actually have more control over. So when we have unnatural schedules, the cortisol cycles get upset, as we've just talked about. Melatonin gets downregulated. Insulin sensitivity gets downregulated. So anytime that you have cortisol high, insulin is also going to be high at the same time. Why is that? What does insulin do? Insulin pushes sugar into the bloodstream and then pushes it out into the cells where it can be used. Okay? So insulin is actually a fat storage hormone, right? So when you have a lot of sugar around, it's going to store that sugar. Insulin's going to come out to store that sugar, right? So when cortisol levels are up, insulin comes up, it starts to push the sugar around, and when there's a lot of insulin flooding the system, after a while, it's overloads the system and the receptors get dulled to it, and then you get resistance to that insulin, and that's called diabetes, right? That's what that's called, diabetes. So our insulin sensitivity gets down-regulated, meaning we want to have lots of sugar around, so we're going to kind of ignore that insulin so that we can have the sugar around because we're in a stress mode, we got a tiger to fight. So when cortisol levels are high, insulin levels are going to be high. But watch what else happens when there's unnatural lighting, all right? So think about if you're a bear, and it's the summer season, what is your job during summer that's going to help you the rest of the year? Eat and store fat. So when there's a lot of light around, if you're a bear, you're going to be eating and you're going to be in fat storage mode. Because pretty soon there's not going to be a lot of light, and then you're going to be using that fat up during the winter when you're hibernating. You're going to be burning that fat. So when there's a lot of light around, our bodies go into fat storage mode. And things like leptin are going to be downregulated. Leptin is the satiation hormone. When you feel like you've had enough to eat, that's leptin saying, yeah, I'm good, I've had enough to eat. But when leptin goes down, you just keep eating. Ghrelin is the hormone for appetite. Well, ghrelin goes up when we have unnatural lighting. So there's two things that are pushing us to eat more. Cortisol will cause carb cravings because carb is how you get fast sugar in, and if you're fighting a tiger and you need more energy fast, so you're going to be craving carbs to try to get that fast energy. And then insulin is going to store that fat. Okay? What is this a perfect design for? Right? Obesity, right? Weight gain, fat storage. Sleep deprivation leads to fat storage. And where do we store that fat? Right around our belly. Belly fat is associated with poor sleep. When you see the fat loading up right here, that's associated with poor sleep and limited exertion. And both of those are the things that drive cortisol levels. So when you see this, that's what's happening. Their system is flooded with cortisol. So when you think about it, if you were going to store fat, but you still had to go hunt and gather, putting it right here is a really convenient place to put it. Because you can still go and hunt, packing it in right here. Do you see? So it's a perfect design for our original lifestyle that we should be living. But in the modern life, where we've engineered movement out and we've put all these foods in that aren't even foods, right? This is a recipe for disaster, right? This is what's killing us, right? So you get the belly fat happening. Other effects of sleep deprivation is, again, it's going to affect our irritability, cognitive impairment, memory losses, severe yawning, right? Hallucinations, symptoms similar to ADHD. Wow. How many people are being given a diagnosis, even put on a medication, and it's actually because they're just not getting good sleep, right? Impaired immune system. Research came out recently that showed that if our circadian rhythm is altered where we're not getting good sleep, it will mess up our immune system rhythms during the day. So poor sleep at night will mess up immune system rhythms in the daytime. Type 2 diabetes, we already talked about that's going to increase the risk. And when we have high cortisol levels, our blood pressure will go up as well. So that's linked to cardiovascular disease as well. And then our reaction time goes down, so higher risk for musculoskeletal injuries. You're bumbling around, you're not catching yourself, you're stumbling and falling. Decreased accuracy, even tremors, aches and pains, growth suppression, obesity, temperatures lower, right? All of this is linked to sleep deprivation. Can you imagine the people that are on medications for all these things when really what they need to do is just get good sleep? And do you know how many people are voluntarily, willingly depriving themselves of sleep, right? Because they're on their devices or whatever other reasons, they're choosing it, right? Yeah. All right, so the number one cause for sleep deprivation is voluntary. Yeah, humans, the only mammals that will willingly delay sleep. Yeah, right. And so sleep debt is definitely a problem. So what can we do about this? What are the best practices regarding sleep? First, you want to use that circadian rhythm as a guide. So I went into detail with that because I wanted to really have it bake in. I want you to get, like, how do I need to be making my choices here? All right? So here are some examples of how you might live this. What would happen if you actually didn't turn on any lights when you went home? So that when it was dark, it really was dark. Right? Oh, then it would really start to hit you like it's nothing to do. Can't see anything. Time to go to sleep, right? So one thing you might want to do is maybe just light candles. What if you only lit candles when it got dark? And we're coming into the darkest part of the year, right? I can just see the stress on people's faces about, but my productivity, right? Because what is actually happening for most people is you go through your day, 6 p.m. hits, you go home, right? And that's when the second half of your day begins, right? How many people are guilty of that, right? I'm raising my hand on that one, yeah. Oh, good, I'm done work. Now I can go work on my projects or my housework or my cleaning and this and cooking and, right? The list goes on and on. Never mind childcare, right? Never mind hobbies, things you like to do, right? So use that circadian rhythm as a guide. And I want to just say at my daughter's school, they actually have a sleep project in 10th grade where they have to promise to go to bed and wake up at the same time for a number of days. How long is it for?
I think it's a month. We're
For
about
1
to do
month.
it, and also we have to sleep. We have to go to bed and wake up at the same time, and we also have to sleep. I think it's 9.25 hours every night,
9.25
which is
hours.
the recommended
That's what's recommended for
thing
their
for
age group.
children our age.
Yeah, yeah, right?
Minimum, really, isn't it minimum?
Yeah,
It's
for
9
that
to
age.
12.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think maybe that's the recommended. I'm not sure if that's the minimum.
Anyway, so that's what
But,
they're
yeah.
targeting, 9.25 hours of sleep. And
If we don't do that, then we fail the class.
If you fail,
Oh,
if you
no.
miss it, if you miss one night of not doing that, you fail the class.
My God.
Right? Let's up the ante here, right? Right? I love that, right? What if we actually gave ourselves those same kind of ultimatums? What if we made sleep so important, right? Like that, right?
It is.
The Lake Champlain Waldorf School. The school, yeah. So I want you to have that as an example. Ramp it up. Like, do you know that it used to be that CEOs would be, competing about who could get the most done and get the least sleep? Now they're actually challenging each other and bragging about how much sleep they are getting. Yeah. So that's moving in the right direction. So 8 to 9 hours of sleep is what we want to hit. Before the light bulb came into play in our world, humans would tend to sleep 9 hours every night, 9 hours. As soon as the light bulb showed up, the average sleep went down to 8 hours. As soon as screens came into play, the average sleep is now 6 hours, 6 to 7 hours. Yeah. But our bodies were not designed for that. We're not adapting well to that. We're not. Yeah, it's a problem. So you want to go for the 8 to 9 hours. Some people use the Fitbits for, measuring their steps and calories and all that. If you're going to have a Fitbit, use it for a little while to really measure how much sleep are you actually getting. That's the most powerful way to use it that I can find. And I wouldn't necessarily use it all the time for years. Just get information, but then I wouldn't really want to have that frequency on your body all the time, 24/7. I wouldn't want to do that. But for information, I think it has value. Dark, quiet. So what kind of environment do we want to have? Think of the cave, right? That's what we're designed for. Go slink into the cave when it's time to go to sleep. So dark, quiet, and comfortable. Now when I say dark, I really mean dark. I mean no little lights on devices showing up, no clock shining, no night lights. Like, get those night lights out of our kids' rooms. Like,
What about those Himalayan salt lamps
No.
that have a dimmer switch?
no, gone. Yeah, you want no light at all. And you know what? Eye masks Nope, they don't do it because light gets in through our skin all over our bodies. Yeah, so you want no light in the room at all. Like when I was just away for the weekend, we were in a hotel. I took that clock and put it face down so that light wasn't coming out. I put towels underneath the door crevices. We close those blinds all the way so you get as dark as you can. Yeah. So when we say dark, we really mean dark. Quiet also. Quiet is important, right? And if you have noise that you can't avoid, then white noise can be a solution to that. So that's a different type of quiet that you can create. And comfortable. The temperature that's optimum for sleeping is 60 degrees. I remember reading that in a pediatrics book. Like, what's the ideal temperature for your kids to sleep in? Like 60. Like, that must be a typo. Isn't it supposed to be 70? No, 60. It's supposed to be 60. We will sleep our best when the air temperature is 60, and we're all cuddled, but we want air temperature to be 60. An E-fast. We want to have an E-fast. That means an electronic fast. That means before you go to bed, you don't have devices in front of you. Yeah. Savannah, can you bring in the goggles? So, I have a present for you, and I actually ordered enough for everybody, but only half of the order came in. So some of you tonight will get your present, and some of you will get it another day when it comes in. So I want you to have the E-fast. I definitely want you to have the E-fast. But even before you have the E-fast, as soon as the sun goes down, like around 6 p.m., if you're going to be on devices, like best to be on an E-fast 90 minutes before you go to sleep. But if you're going to be on devices, say 2 or 3 hours before you go to sleep, once the sun goes down, I want you to do everything you can to stop the blue light from getting into your eyes. So we have these safety goggles that are yellow lenses. They block blue light. 1, I have 6. 2.
Oh, do you want to show them?
I will. Well, I'm going to show you my fancy ones. These are my fancy cool ones. My fancy cool blue light blockers. All right, so in our house, guess what happens? In our house, we've got those goggles on. When the sun goes down, we got the goggles on.
Yeah.
Walking around the house with the goggles on because look at the LED lights that we have now. Right? We got all those LED lights. That's blue light.
And the lights, like,
Yeah.
they replaced the incandescent light bulbs.
The incandescents were good. Yeah, the blue lights are a problem, yeah. So blue blocking light, blocking the blue light when the sun goes down will help you to start that melatonin building in your system again.
Is it just through the eyes, or does it affect through the skin?
Yeah, well,
Like,
it can go through the skin, yeah, but it's going to be most dramatic coming in through the eyes, yeah. Yeah. All right, reducing alcohol and caffeine, especially at night. So drinking earlier in the day would be better. If you're going to drink alcohol, drink earlier in the day.
I'm back from lunch.
And just have a household culture. It's really hard when there's a night owl and a morning glory in the same house, right? So just have it like in our house, we go to sleep early. This is what we do. The TV goes off, right? The lights go down, right? This is what we do in our house. We all go to bed early, right? And so just like grab some firewood, grab your mate, off you go, right? And it turns out, like, what are the activities that we do at night besides sleeping? It turns out that sex actually will increase oxytocin and turn down the cortisol, right? So listen to what I'm telling you. Drink earlier, sleep more, have more sex. Yeah, you could do this. You really can, right? It's sounding better and better, right? Okay, so these are the best practices, but wait, there's more. Stay away from foods that disrupt sleep. So that's going to be the white foods, the inflammatory foods, which if you're in my practice for any length of time at all, you're getting that anti-inflammatory diet handout, right? But of course also the caffeine and this other types of stimulants. The last meal should be 2 hours before sleep. Just eat lightly if it's late. Supplements that you might need to bridge the gap. So if you're having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, until you've got your rhythm set and your system's back to healthy normal, there are some great supplements that do help. And magnesium is a very useful tool. Setitol, I like it, has magnolia in it, it seems to be useful. Orchex is useful for the building blocks to create the melatonin and create the relaxation hormones. Chamomile is good, valerian is good, poppy is good. Tryptophan we can get from foods like turkey. We think of turkey making us sleepy, that has tryptophan in it. Antronex is for if you have histamines or allergies or some kind of response, if that's interfering with your sleep. Because if you have a lot of histamines, that actually ramps up the stress response as well.
Which one was that?
Yeah, it's Antronex, yeah. So these are the supplements that can bridge the gap until you're in your healthy normal mode. Omega-3s are the fish oils, right, the essential fatty acids, and they actually provide a resilience to sleep deprivation. So if you do have sleep deprivation, making sure you're loading up on your omega-3s will help you manage that. It's not the best, but it's going to help you to manage it. Yeah, Ann?
What about taking melatonin tablets?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that because I want my body to create it. But it may be a bridge that you use. It may be a bridge that you use. And I'll tell you my secret, and there are certain situations where I think it can be useful that are very short term. And then also activated charcoal. So remember we talked about the toxins don't get flushed out as well if we're sleep deprived, both in the brain and in our body. We don't go into that detox mode if we're not getting good sleep. So taking activated charcoal can actually act like an extra detox organ. So if things are going on and you're not getting good sleep, taking activated charcoal each day can again help you wade your way through it. Again, I just think of it as a temporary thing.
What about those pads that you put on your feet that are supposed to detox?
Detox. I don't know about that. I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
They certainly turn black.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Some other best practices again: use the white noise or nature sounds, or use earplugs. If there's noise around, just throw some earplugs in if that's what you need to do. Vigorous exertion no later than 4 hours before bed is best. And no eating before 2 hours before bed. You can also use the EFT tapping technique. So I've introduced some of you to that, and I do have a workshop online that you can learn it with. EFT is tapping on the endpoints of acupuncture meridians in order to turn the stress switch off. And I remember when my daughter was young, if she was like not falling asleep, I'd just go and I'd do a little tapping with her, and then next thing you know, she's gone. Right to sleep, yeah. So we've used EFT with her since she was very, very little. And then if you are traveling and you are encountering jet lag, that's another form of sleep deprivation that we have, jet lag. And so many people travel these days. So when you cross time zones, and now your body started out in one time zone, and now you're 6 hours later, you're in another part of the country, and it's 3 hours off, right? Jet lag can be a problem. So there are actually acupuncture points that you can use, and I have a link on my website that will take you to a great program, and it shows you where the links are. And so all you do is you get on the plane, you look at what time it is where you're going, and then certain organs are active during certain times of the day. And so you're going to just start to stimulate the acupuncture points that go with the organs that are active at that time where you're going to be. And every 2 hours when you do that, by the time you get there, your body's already in sync with the time that you're landing in. And then I also will use healthy chocolate if I need to just stimulate myself a little bit to get into that groove where I am. Or that's a time when I might use some melatonin to put me to sleep, artificially, because I want to get into the groove of where I am. But honestly, the jet lag acupuncture points mostly do the trick. And I just say I need the chocolate just because I like the chocolate. But I always only eat healthy chocolate. And we have a whole workshop in February on healthy chocolate, so stay tuned.
I bet that one's well attended.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Especially if you give out samples.
All right, now what if you've got those things managed, but you still got this sleep apnea or thoracic outlet or restless legs? So let's look at what do I find in the practice as the thing that's causing that, and what's the best solution for these things? So first off, remember, when we're looking at the nervous system, that's in charge of controlling what? What does the nervous system control?
Your breathing.
Everything. Starts with an E, ends with a everything. Yeah, everything. The nervous system controls everything. And it's this fuse box, right? So going down the spine, the brain sends the messages down the spine, out through the nerves to go to all the organ systems, right? And if there's any interference in that flow of messages between the brain and the body, that's when we'll start to see breaking down of function in the body, right? So we call that a subluxation. The subluxation interferes with the flow of messages, and then the brain can't control the body, and then we see breaking down in function. Because remember, didn't we already say that the body was designed to be healthy? So if there's something happening where the body's not healthy, only one thing can cause the body not being healthy, and that's interference in that expression of that smart body. And there's only two things that will interfere: toxicities and deficiencies. Those are the only two things. So if someone's not experiencing health, we just need to figure out what are the toxicities, what are the deficiencies, and reconcile that, and then that gets them back on the road to healthy normal. When it comes to nerve supply, when you have nerve interference, that could be a deficiency or a toxicity as well. Something is off. There's altered nerve impulses. And we call that a subluxation. So if the brain is sending the message down the spine, and then you get a misalignment of the vertebrae, let's see if I can, oops, right? So here's the nerves come down here and they come out through between the bones. If the bones misalign and put pressure on the nerves, that's when it's going to interfere. And that joint misalignment leads to soft tissue damage, which then leads to inflammation. The inflammation leads to nerve irritation, and when the nerves are being irritated, your smart body is going to strap down that joint with muscle spasms to stop it from doing any more damage to the nervous system. So you're going to get the muscle spasms, and that means that joint is not going to move anymore the right way, so it gets fixated. It's a fixation in the joint fixation. It's not moving. When you have joints that are not moving, like a rusty hinge, if it's not moving, that in and of itself sends stress signaling to the brain. The brain says something's wrong, that joint's not moving, something's wrong. And it sends stress signaling to the brain that puts us into a stress response in our body. So a subluxation at one level can actually put us into a stress response in our body. And what happens when we go into a stress response? What hormone starts to flood our system? Cortisol. And then we see how that starts to affect our sleep, right? Do you see how this cycle happens? So stress hormone production, cortisol, that's from the subluxations. Okay,
Dr.
so
Rice, what did you say? Toxicities and one other thing?
deficiencies. Yeah, too much or too little, right? Toxicity or a deficiency. So cortisol, what does cortisol do? It's stress hormone production. Melatonin will be downregulated when cortisol is high. Blood pressure will increase. Insulin sensitivity decreases. It weakens connective tissue. Cortisol will weaken our connective tissue. And then if we're not getting the good deep sleep, we're not getting repair of that tissue, right? Immune system gets downregulated and we get inflammation and swelling. All of these things go with chronically high cortisol levels. Not the normal fluctuation of the day, but when the cortisol levels are chronically high, that's when this all becomes troublesome for us. Now, sleep apnea. What exactly is this sleep apnea thing, all right? Sleep apnea is when the the oxygen doesn't get into our body the way that it should. So you have air going in through your nose and you have these turbinates in here which are to warm the air, so the air doesn't go through a straight passage, it has to go through some ripples. And then you have membranes that are covering that, and you can have laxity in your soft palate, and you can have inflammation in the lining and the mucous membranes, and the next thing you know, you get snoring. Anybody here ever know anybody that snores, right? Yeah. And so that snoring is the reverberations of the air moving through these turbinates or through the soft palate that is relaxed. Obesity, weight is part of this picture as well. And also sleep positioning can be part of this picture. So we have people that are not getting enough oxygen into their body while they're sleeping, and they're waking up, they've slept a long time, and they're exhausted when they're waking up because they didn't get enough oxygen while they were sleeping. This is the example of this is when somebody is sleeping and maybe they're snoring and all of a sudden it's quiet and you can't hear any sound at all, and then suddenly there's a big breath that comes in. So that soft pellet can shut the airway off, and then you're not getting any oxygen, and then suddenly you get that big breath that stimulates it again. So that there can be people that have very severe sleep apnea. And what we know is there are things that will worsen this. So sometimes you can have a deviated septum, that might be one of the factors, but we know that lifestyle behaviors will worsen it. And so alcohol is one of the things that will relax the palate, and all the inflammatory foods, the white foods, are going to increase inflammation in the body. And that increased inflammation is going to affect these membranes as well. Right? So do you ever notice that? Like anybody that you know that snores, if they have pizza and beer, oh, forget it, right? It's going to be a loud night, right? Yeah. And you'll see that's what the relationship is. I mean, there are some people that don't snore at all if they stay away from those things, right? So we can see that there's a relationship there. Now, there's another piece that happens that I want you to see here. And so this is the CPAP machine that people use, and this is the solution, right? Pretty much our medical model is looking for ways to manage the symptoms, not correct them, but manage them. This is one of the ways that's being managed. And what you'll notice is, look at the angle of the head here that it goes in order to use this contraption. What is happening to the cervical spine? Reversing, right? So the nervous system, the spine, is actually being compromised here. And that compromise actually will interfere with the nerve supply to these membranes, to the structures of the head. And it actually, the wearing this contraption can actually worsen the situation.
You know, they tell you your head has to be elevated to wear it. You can't just lie.
I don't know, but I know this is what's common. This is what's common, right? And so here's what I often find with people that have apnea. They've already got a loss of the curve in their neck. They've got oftentimes they'll have a reversal of the curve in their neck. I see those two going hand in hand. So what do we do if we encounter sleep apnea here in the practice? The common areas that I will find the subluxation patterns are this upper cervical area, C1 to C3. The brainstem lives right here. The brainstem is where all the control centers are for all of our organ systems, including respiration. The respiratory center lives right in the top of the spine, right? And if you reverse that curve in the neck and you put stress on the brainstem, guess which control center might be being affected? You see that? The respiratory center, right? We also find this area right here at the bottom of the spine. This is common when there's like sinuses and mucous membranes, when that's part of this picture with the apnea. So, and oftentimes I say chemical relates to this because it's our diet that can make this worse. The beer and the pizza, right? It's our diet choices that can make this completely worse. So you take somebody that's subluxated and you add those foods and maybe add a little deviated septum in there, right? And now you've got the perfect storm where they're heading for their CPAP machine. Like, pretty sexy, right? Yeah. Yeah, who wants to sleep with that, right? But not, people do because they have to. Like, people
How
like,
can they sleep with the contraption on their
you
faces?
can learn to
They get
tolerate
used to
anything,
it,
right?
yeah.
You can learn to tolerate anything. Yeah, yeah. All right, what about thoracic outlet syndrome, right? So that's where you feel the tingliness, so you wake up and you get tingling or numbness in your hands. Very common. That's actually coming from this part of the spine right here, thoracic outlet. And so this is the person that is moving during their sleep. They're just flip-flopping all night long, and they just don't even get good sleep because they're just active all night long, right? And so if you're sleeping next to somebody, right, like they're active all night long, they're affecting my sleep, right? So that's oftentimes, it's thoracic outlet. So our bodies actually, if there's irritation in the nervous system, we're going to move, trying to stretch and trying to give that nerve some room to breathe. So without even knowing it, while we're sleeping, we're flipping and flopping and moving around, trying to release that nerve irritation. So the common areas are going to be this area right here. And interestingly enough, that T9 area is also the nerve supply to the adrenals. So if there's adrenal stress going on, I'll oftentimes find this is a chronic pattern. And then that keeps that person awake. I mean, it's a spiral that people get into. Also, I want you to recognize our culture, right? We're going into this mode all the time now, right? We're hunching forward. So subluxations in this area, I'm finding, are being promoted by posture, poor posture during the day. So physical stresses meaning poor posture is one of the things that actually will promote this subluxation pattern, and then people don't get good sleep. So when we can correct the subluxations, that's awesome, but what if we also improve the posture so they don't keep recreating it? That's when we really get the solutions happening. Okay, what about restless leg syndrome, right? Yeah, one time I had a patient come in, she said, yeah, I'm not getting good sleep. I said, well, what do you think's causing that? She goes, oh, it's restless leg syndrome. My husband's. Right? Her husband had that shaky leg that was happening all day long, and it would keep waking her up, right? They were causing sleep deprivation for her. So restless leg syndrome, what is happening here? Usually it's going to be a subluxation pattern down at the bottom of the spine. But one of the reasons that this is happening is we have two types of fibers in our nervous system. Pain fibers will actually send signaling kind of at a slow rate, but our muscle twitch movement sends signaling at a faster rate. So did you ever notice, like, if you were to like hammer your thumb, you go, oh, 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 oh. The reason we do that is the movement actually overrides the pain fiber. The pain twitch is a slow signal, but the movement is a fast signal, so it will override the pain signal. So when we have this restless leg thing, there can be a relationship that our body's trying to override a pain signal that may not be perceivable, but it's there's damage in the nervous system happening, and then there'll be movement of the leg of just trying to like override that signal. It's interesting how that works. But oftentimes this is where we're going to see the subluxation patterns. It's the lower part of the spine because this is the nerve supply that goes right down into the legs.
I've noticed a direct correlation to when I'm really, really exhausted at the end of my day and going to bed.
Yeah.
Just really just depleted of energy.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
necessarily anything else. My legs will start to act like that.
Yeah.
But if I got like good sleep, it was a weekend, I was able to sleep, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not not that exhausted, I don't ever have.
Yeah. So anybody ever had that experience of being so tired that you're wired and you can't sleep? Like, what is going on there? So tired that you're wired,
But
and
the
then you don't
legs
sleep that you should.
specifically.
Right. And so I think sometimes that's going to be magnesium.
And I want to just like
Yeah.
massage them and
Yeah.
I do and I bang them around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I just had a sleep study and they said I don't have apnea and I don't have restless leg syndrome.
And did they see whether you were subluxated or not?
No.
No.
That was
No.
missing from the study.
Yeah, right? All right, so subluxations, that's the key. So if you have the healthy normal, but then you have the subluxation where it's putting pressure on the nerve, you see how this spine, it doesn't have the healthy curve, right? Lay this person down, put a CPAP on them. This is that reverse curve that happens. And we even have degenerative change happening here. So subluxations cause nerve irritation and interference in your body's inability to heal and remain healthy, right? Subluxations get in the way of that. So we've got to reconcile this as well as the other behaviors that happen. So when we look at what are the things that cause subluxations, remember, it's our unnaturally stressful modern life. It's our posture, it's all the bad habits, and they add together. It's cumulative. It just adds together and it sets up this downward spiral. And that's the thing that causes subluxations, and you can see it here, like over time, like here, let's just put a cell phone right about here, right? That's what we're seeing nowadays everywhere we go. People are in this, they're either, if they're not like this, they're like this, right? I see it posturally all the time. I want you guys to start noticing it. It's there. And I especially want you to notice it in yourselves, right? If you catch yourself in that posture, make a change, All right, so what are the best ways to sleep? So that's usually a question that comes up. I'm going to answer it. So the right way to sleep is that you have your spine in alignment, and this is looking where the center of the spine, the center of the neck is, and the center of the head. I do want a curve in the neck, but this is not saying you want a straight spine. It just means you want things in alignment here. So you don't want this point on the head lower than your neck, and you don't want sleeping on your side. You don't want your head lower. You want the spine in alignment. So you don't want it higher either. Does this sound like Goldilocks? Right? The three bears? Not too little, not too much. You want it just right. And so when you're sleeping, you don't want too little of a pillow. You don't want too much of a pillow. Here's the CPAP guy right here, right? You want it to be just right. So when we talk about pillows, remember we talk about the curve in the spine, we want that healthy curve. I find this proper pillow is the best pillow here, and that's because of the way that it's designed. So how many people here already have a proper pillow? Anybody? Oh, just one. Okay, yeah. So you guys are gonna want to know about this. You know when I talk about the sleep molding exercises to prepare your spine for sleep, you can get rid of that towel because you can now use this pillow instead, proper pillow. And it's actually made so that it has these dowels in it that are gonna completely support that cervical spine and remold that spine. When we talk about people with sleep apnea, this is a pillow that's gonna help these people because it's gonna open up that nerve supply. It's gonna open things up. So the proper pillows, I highly recommend
You
this.
still need the towel.
Yeah,
for
you
the
do.
back, though, right?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Okay, and then some people are asking me about mattresses. What's the best mattress?
I just went mattress shopping.
Did you? All right. Well, I have to tell you, I love the Sleep Number bed. I love my Sleep Number bed. I've had that bed for, trying to think how old you are, well, longer than you, over 20 years I've had my Sleep Number bed. And occasionally I have to add a few foam, there's some foam edges around it because I sit on the edge of the bed, so I have to just replace that. It's like $25, right? I've put $50 into my Sleep Number bed since I've had it for 20 years. Yeah.
The controls
Awesome.
plug into an outlet.
It does, but once you get it set, it doesn't have to stay plugged in. Yeah, it's only when you want to change it. Yeah. So it's awesome. I love my Sleep Number bed. I can't speak highly enough for it. We've got a Sleep Number store right up at the mall there. Yeah. And if you are interested in it, I actually have some coupons so you can get a discount because I'm such a fan. So let me know if you want that. Now there's another mattress that's out there, the BioPosture. This one, I don't have this mattress, but I really like it because it's the one that is made without any toxins. And actually with a note from me, you can even have it made without the flame retardant. Yeah. So I really like that this is made in the healthiest way as far as the materials go. And I think it's pretty supportive for your spine as well. I have colleagues that are using it.
Is it
So-
natural latex or something else?
I don't know the details of that, but I'll give you the link so you can find out, yeah, from the company. And I also, there's some kind of discount that I can get for you too. Okay, so those are answers the mattress question that always comes up. All right, and so how do we correct subluxations? Of course, the chiropractic adjustments are the key way, and in fact, chiropractic adjustments in and of themselves go a long way. A lot can change, a lot can improve with your health just by getting adjusted. But what we find is if you also break the bad habits and stop recreating the subluxations, then we're going to cover more ground. And if we add in specific exercises to get the spine stronger, then again we're going to cover more ground that way. Right? So it's a three-legged stool of correction that we get our best results with. And when we talk about breaking the bad habits, poor sleep habits is one of the ones that one of the habits we want to break, and we want to install healthy sleep habits. So now you know what they are, right? And so you want to just start installing them as soon as possible. And so if you can't sleep, right, then you want to get adjusted so that you can sleep well. But you also, it's not just getting adjusted, it's also making sure you put in the healthy sleep habits. Because you can have a clear nervous system and still stay up way too late and get the blue light in and all that, right? So you have to install the healthy habits along with getting your subluxations cleared. You know the different, and of course, right, you go then, once you do that, you're going to go from that empty battery where you're low energy, you're drained, you're fatigued, and you get to full power, right? Healthy, normal, full power, right? So what do you want? Tolerating the drain or full power? Now I wanted to also mention when we look at evaluating if you have subluxations, the HRV one that we do on you, the heart rate variability, that's one of the ones that I consistently will find if people have poor sleep habits, they will not hit the bullseye. They will not hit the bullseye. You know, the green section, right? That'll be one of the reasons why they're tanking, is they're not addressing their sleep properly. But once we get that sleep nailed, that's one of the things that will really shift that. So we measure it. We know how to measure whether you are adapting or not. And if you think about, this is your adaptability level that you have, and then these are the levels of stresses that you may have. If you have high cortisol and stress level all the time, You know, you're having trouble managing that. And then if you have trouble managing it, if this cortisol level is high for a long, chronic amount of time, it's going to start to affect your adaptability. So your adaptability goes down. Well, when most people, when their adaptability goes down, the stresses don't go away. They stay strong, and this is when we're overloaded. This is when the symptoms start to happen in the body. You know, this is when you're getting sick and the diseases are happening. So getting you adjusted can boost you back up. But what would happen if you actually addressed the stresses and broke the bad habits? Now, when you're living like this means you're adapting to the stresses that are in your life. And when we look at the heart rate variability, when you're hitting the bullseye, it tells us this is happening. That's what it tells us, that you're adapting effectively, right? So if we see that you're not in the bullseye, it tells us that this may be happening, that you're not adapting, okay? So that's one of the ways we measure it. And we measure subluxations in many different ways. You guys have been through the exams, you know how we measure it. And remember, we have to measure the parts that you can't feel, because you can't tell us about those parts. So we're not going to go with that dysfunctional definition of health of, oh, it's how I feel. No, we're not going to go with that. We're going to go with function. It's how you function. We're going to measure that. And that's what the technology does. So getting checked is key. So anybody that wants to get checked, if you're interested in getting checked and you're curious what's happening in your nervous system, then we've got a special for tonight so that you can get checked. Yeah. All right. And so remember, sleep is king. Sleep is king. Sleep is not a luxury. It should trump everything, right? Sleep is king. However, if you're not addressing it, if you think, I'll get to it, yeah, this is not a good week for me to start doing good sleep habits. No, maybe I'll try that next week, right? And so the stresses are just going to keep continuing, right? So remember, procrastination is the thief of health, right? So if you snooze, you lose, right? In the case of taking action, right? So think about what your action steps are going to be and install those habits as soon as possible. And I want to actually just put a pitch out there that if you have other groups that I can go and talk to get this message out, I would be delighted to do that. This is a very popular talk. I do a lot of corporate talks. So if you have a group that I can come and talk to, I promise you people will get such great value from this. I'm happy to do it. So give the name of whoever the contact person for your work or your club or your church, whatever organization you're part of, give them that contact information. And then anybody that is thinking about someone that, oh, I wish they were here tonight, they should have heard this information. If it's someone that needs to get checked to see if they have subluxations, we have the coupons, the vouchers, so it will reduce the cost of their first visit. So you can grab one of those, and it's all about sleep, and you can be direct with it. If you know people are struggling, because we learned tonight, didn't we? 70% of people are struggling with their sleep. Like, think of the people you know. 70% of them are struggling and don't know that there's an answer to it. Yeah.
Since I live out of town, you said you're filming that.
Yeah.
Where can I go to show other people?
Oh, yeah. We'll load this on our website, and there'll be a link to it. Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah. All right. So that's our talk for tonight. Thank you so much for your time and attention and being action takers. And we'll see you next month for digestion.
Thank you.